Hello, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Let's Talk. My name is Mario Luna, and in the next hour, we'll be talking about Australia, one of the most promising countries in the dissemination of Conscientiology in the world today. Feel free to ask your questions anytime you want. Just leave a comment and question in the comment section, right, on the right side of the screen. But before we get started, it's important to remind you, don't believe in anything, not even in what we say here in our program. Experience, have your own evidences. Let's meet our special team today, our very special debaters joining us today. Jacqueline Cohen. Jacqueline Cohen has a background in urban planning and urban design and currently works as an English teacher. She moved to Foz do Iguaçu, Brazil from Australia in 2014. She has been a volunteer of Conscientiology since 2007, a Conscientiology teacher since 2010, and is currently coordinating the international area of CIEC. She's a co-author of the Glossary of Essential Terms of Conscientiology. Her area of research interest is parapsychology, and she's dedicated to the internationalization of Conscientiology around the world. Very welcome, Jacqueline Cohen.
Thanks, Mario. It's great to be here and be talking about this topic that, I like a lot.
Great. And living in Australia at the moment, Tatiana Martha is a polyglot writer and educator interested in parapsychic phenomena from an early age. Tatiana has been a Conscientiology volunteer for over 2 decades. Currently, Tatiana lives on the Sunshine Coast, Australia, and is a volunteer of Reprendencia and Biblio Africa, contributing to the acquisition, translation, and donation of books in the African continent. Her first book, Intensive Course, is available in English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Romania. Welcome, Tatiana.
Hello, Mario. Hello, everyone. Good day, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. And thank you so much for the invitation.
Great. I'm glad to have you here. Ken McCall is a consulting anthropologist and linguist with over 20 years of applied work with Aboriginal people in Australia. He has been engaged with Conscientiology since 1997 and volunteered in several consciential-centric institutions since then. He has been a Conscientiology instructor since 1998 and a Penta practitioner since 2008. Very welcome, Kim.
Thank you, Mario, and hello, everybody. Lovely to be here.
Very good. Our debate is based on conscientiology. It's important to say conscientiology is a neuroscience that studies the consciousness as a whole, right? Conscious is me, you, each human being on the planet, right? The studies of conscientiology as a whole are based on the consciential paradigm, which is focused on 7 pillars: bioenergies, multidimensionality, pluri-existentiality, self-research, cosmoethics, universalism, and holosoma. Conscientiology has more than 20 consciential-centric institutions, each of them specialized in a specific subject of research. ASSIPI, which stands for International Association for Intersubstantial Parapsychism, is specialized in the study, research, and development and practical use of parapsychism, an indispensable attribute for the consciential evolution. ASSIPI in English project is our project here, right? The project that is performing the show today. ASSIPI English project is engaged in the internationalization of Conscientiology around the world. Very well. So let's get started talking about Australia today. But it's important just to have a very short presentation about Australia. Australia, of course, I googled it, right? So Australia, officially the Commonwealth of Australia, is a sovereign country comprising the mainland of Australian continent, the island of Tasmania, and numerous smaller islands. Australia is the largest country by area in Oceania and world's sixth largest country. Australia has a highly developed market economy and one of the highest per capita incomes globally. So this is just some words about Australia, right? And where Australia is in the world. And now let's talk about that. Well, let's have our guest here. Tatiana Mota is a Brazilian living in Australia, and Jacqueline Cohen is an Australian living in Brazil, and Kim has lived in Australia for 23 years. Well, I would like to start, people, having your words about the experience. Let's go for the Australian side and have your words about what is it living in Australia, because we have actually Kim, who was born in Switzerland, and Tatiana Mota, who was born in Brazil, living in Australia at the moment. So I'd like your words telling what is it to live in Australia.
Well, Mario, I think I can start if it's okay.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, awesome. So I've been living in Australia for over 6 years now. And obviously living in Australia, I am Brazilian. I have lived most of my life in Brazil. I spent 1 year in the US when I was in my 20s, early 20s. So, but most of my life I spent in Brazil. And when I moved to Australia, I was in my 40s already. So it was a big change. What I normally tell people, and I'll tell this really like a short story, is when we moved to a different country, when this happened to me, it felt as if I had died, if I had desommated, because you just leave your life, the life you had behind, right? And at the same time, it's like as if you were resommating as well. You were being born again, because you just start over in a new country, in a new culture, language, getting to know people, and getting, to learn everything again. So this is a very interesting experience that I had. And I will be able to talk a little more throughout the chat today. But in terms of Australia, as we all know, Australia is a multicultural country. So we have people from basically everywhere in the world living in the same place, which makes it very positive in terms of, the Holothocene of universalism, and the possibility of meeting people from your past, from multiple lives that were born in different countries and just are meeting in Australia. So I guess this is one aspect that I wanted to share with you guys at this moment.
Okay, Tatiana. Kim.
Yeah, it looks probably a slightly different angle naturally, because my experience is different in different ways. For me, English wasn't a new language coming here. There was probably less of a cultural shift coming from Europe, and I'd lived in the UK for the last 4 years. Apart from a year in Brazil, I'd been in the UK before coming here. And I think as far as European countries goes, Australia is most strongly influenced by the UK. So in many ways, the main shift for me was the distance. Australia is very far away from pretty much anywhere other than Indonesia and New Zealand and Papua New Guinea. And so as a European, I was very used to moving between countries, shifting from one culture to another. So it's kind of almost a different experience really to you, Tatiana, because I actually missed the multiculturalism that I was used to from Europe coming here, and just everything being Australian wherever you went, right? You go all the way 2,000 kilometers to the other side of the country, still Australian. Whereas in Europe, you've shifted a lot of countries by that. And I guess the other angle for me is that my work has been from the very beginning with Aboriginal communities here. So that actually did give me that multicultural angle, but I had to find it, because I had to start to appreciate that working with one Aboriginal community and then going to a different community was quite diverse in itself, right? There was many different languages, many different sort of ways of cultural expression. And it also, it's interesting, I've heard other Brazilians in the past comment on how strong and how positive the multiculturalism is in Australia, whereas in my angle, I see a lot more of the underlying racism of colonialism and more of the pathological sides of the country, I think, just because of the nature of my work.
Okay, Kim. All right. So now, Jacqueline is Australia and live in Brazil. So Australia, what prompts you to move to Brazil?
Well, that's interesting, because I grew up, for the first 30 odd years in Australia. But at that moment, I think I had a very strong desire to leave Australia and live in a different country. In actual fact, I was going to be moving to another country. And because of certain circumstances, I ended up not going and decided to go. I'd already been to Brazil once before, a couple of years before then, which was in about 2010, because of Conscientiology, to visit the campus, because that's the center of Conscientiology. But I went back there just to try and get some insight about my next move. I knew I didn't want to go back to Australia because I wanted to have different cultural experiences. And I just felt like it was the next stage of my proexis. And so I ended up staying in Brazil, and, haven't looked back. It's and just like with Tatiana saying that she, is kind of the dysoma. I hadn't thought about it in that way, dysoma and resoma, but it was a very strong impact to come and live in a country as opposed to visit the country. And I never felt more like an Australian than when I moved to Brazil. So it's interesting that.
It's very interesting because we have more or less the same situation here. Tatiana was living in Brazil and moved to Australia, and Kim was in Europe, in Switzerland, and moved to Australia, and you moved to Brazil. So I think that we have something common in the internationalization, concerning the internationalization of Conscientiology, right? Because you guys have played a very important role in this matter, right? With this challenge, right, that we have here of the internationalized Conscientiology. It's very, very, very important. So I decided to have one Let's Talk with the 4 countries at the moment, the 4 most prominent countries or promising countries in the dissemination of Conscientiology in the world, which is Romania, Germany, Australia, and Portugal, right? And it's very intriguing, by the way, that Australia is one of them, because as Kim said, it's on the other side of the world, right? And what is it? Why Australia is so interested in Conscientiology? I mean, why do we have Australia as this promising land for Conscientiology, right? That's very interesting. But before going to the point of talking about Conscientiology itself, I would like us to hear a bit of Australian people, right? In terms of spirituality, what is it in Australia? Are Australian people spiritualized? I'm curious to know that.
Well, we probably all have maybe slightly different perspectives on this, because different parts of the country might be a bit different. So I'm in Adelaide, South Australia, and Adelaide has the, I guess the ambiguous, what's the word? So it has the title of being the city of churches. Because when Adelaide was first founded, it was actually founded on a principle of, it was the first colony here that wasn't a convict, didn't start life as a convict colony, right? So it wasn't prisoners who were the first people who were brought here, which the rest of Australia largely was. And it was actually started on a principle of freedom of faith, and the I can't remember who the name of the governor was, but they basically invited people who were repressed across Europe. There was various people persecuted for the way they did Christianity, so it was largely Christians, right? But all these different forms of Christianity that were repressed in different parts of Europe, they were invited to come to Adelaide, and so there are a lot of churches here. So there is that history. But if you go around town, you'll find that most of these churches now are pubs or clubs or other kinds of used for other kinds of things, right? It's not a big feature now. And on the whole, my impression here is that spirituality isn't really a big feature of life. It's pretty. I think it's one of the highest rates of atheism in terms of Anglo-European countries around the world, or agnosticism at least. Yeah, and so compared to other places like the UK, for example, where it's got all these sort of spiritual traditions, we're very low key in that respect. I don't know what your impressions are, Jacqueline and Tatiana.
Yeah, for me, what was interesting, like also after having come to Brazil, in comparison, I always commented on the fact that, like when I was growing up in Australia, I didn't hear anything about spirituality or any different types of phenomena. It was kind of like, yeah, non-existent, and so that's when I was kind of going along that path of, of skepticism. I guess I had embraced that kind of philosophy or that mindset in a way. And it was only when I, got a bit older that I started to open my mind, to the possibility that something else existed. But I noticed that, I was carrying that kind of that influence from the Holothoscene in terms of that. So there was the fact that people are more atheist. I think Kim, you mentioned, and also this kind of conventional scientific paradigm that has a strong influence on people's mindset. So I think it's a little bit lacking, but I think you do have these subgroups of people that are interested in like New Age, but it's not the mainstream. It's at least comparing to Brazil. I think in Brazil people are a lot more open to accepting different multidimensional phenomena.
Tatiana?
Yeah, I think what Jacqueline just said is really interesting to hear because she's an Australian, right? And it's interesting to hear about how she viewed spiritualism and all that. I think that from my experience interacting with Australians here, my perception is that this reality exists, but people just don't talk about it. It's sort of like a taboo to talk about anything related to religion, spirituality, or anything related to your own values, I would say. So, and due to the multicultures in Australia, obviously there are many people, immigrants, who have their own religion from their own countries, and they obviously practice that, but within their own groups. But at the workplace, for example, you never mention anything related to spirituality, religions, or anything like that. And when people do, it's not very well seen, people make jokes about it and things like that. So, and as Kim said, Australia is one of the most non-religious countries. About almost 40% of the Australians have no religion or are atheists or agnostics. So it's really interesting because even though Australians don't actually have a religion or don't talk about it. They really respect other cultures and other religions. So it's a non-violent religious cultural melting pot, I would say. And people actually respect. You know, I have never seen anyone fighting or being aggressive towards someone else because of their religion. Not that I have seen, not even on TV. So I think this is, even though these kinds of things exist, it's not common to see.
Yes, it's important to say that Brazil is also a multicultural country, but even here we have some, some care about this kind of thing because most of people are religious. So if I tell my students, for example, most of them are religious. If I talk about out of body experiences, clairvoyance, clairaudience, they would definitely think I am not, very well centered. So it's common, right? Even in Brazil. So we have to pay attention and pay due respect to those who doesn't are not on the same page with me. So yeah, we have this problem here. I would like to just to ask more questions about this topic, but before going there, I have some comments here in the chat from Eliane Spauslaw. Thank you, Eliane, for your participation. Eliane says Switzerland also has a big group of volunteers working with Conscientiology with main activities planned for 2024. Very well said, Eliane. Yeah, Switzerland has also been doing lots of things concerning Conscientiology. And we have other comments here from Mark Murray. As an Aussie, Tatiana, you are spot on with taboo around talking about spirituality, says Mark. Thank you, Mark, for your participation as well. We have one more comment here. There is no education in alternative views around this. That's it. And this is exactly what I was going to ask you about, because we see some countries, I think that this difficulty talking about spirituality is general, but in some countries we have more resistance against it. We have maybe a more ingrained religious education or something like this. I just like to know how it is in Australia. There must be something that justifies you guys to be there working. And now I would like to know what has been done. I mean, the courses, the events, how the Australians relate to what has been done so far.
So I guess we start like give a little bit of a history, or because
That's right. Let's talk about to see retrospectively what has been done.
Yeah. But I would just like to say this idea of why Australia. I don't know. There's something here that's kind of fresh. I guess to the Holocene, like it's because it doesn't have, like, it has the Aboriginal history, but in terms of this history of the European history is very new. It's kind of, when you come here, and even the population that was here before was very kind of dispersed. There's not this like heaviness in the Holocene that I think in some other places around the world with longer histories have. I don't know. For me, it's when you come here, you feel lighter somehow. I don't know if this plays a part as well as being closer to, the Asian, Indian countries and all that. But coming back to the history, I found Conscientiology at the end of 2006. It had already existed for a couple of years. I think, Kim, you could mention, you probably connected to Conscientiology before then. But I came, and at that time there was like an office, there was two main volunteers who were very involved in helping to develop Conscientiology in Australia, and they were based in Sydney. And I came and I basically joined a small group of volunteers helping mainly with the teaching of Conscientiology there, giving classes on the weekend, visiting also in different states around. So we did the itinerants of traveling to different states, including giving classes with Kim in Adelaide and other cities around Australia. And that was the main focus, right? To start disseminating Conscientiology in Australia. But it was very slow work. You put a lot of effort in and you get a small result. There was always a few students for every class, sometimes bigger. But it was very, very rewarding work, very, very rewarding. And you felt that assistance, right? The help is there. I would say even stronger than I feel in Brazil. So it was very palpable that that level of support and assistance to really help things grow and develop in Australia. I don't know if anyone else would like to compliment, at least at that point in time.
I think I've been thinking about this. So I was, I think, as I said in introduction, I first got to know Conscientiology in the UK when I was studying in the UK in 97, and I then went to Brazil for a year and was there, and then volunteered somewhere in London. But then I came to Australia in 2000, and I pretty much just did my own thing. I wrote a few things. I was researching things, but there was no community. And I actually only discovered internet was right. Nothing was, we weren't as connected as we are now, even back then. And so I discovered probably Jeff Lloyd and Anna, who were running the place in Sydney, about the same time as you, Jacqueline. Made contact with those guys. And then from 2008 onwards, started organising activities here in Adelaide. And so we then had activities in Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Darwin. But yeah, as you say, and I think we've all talked about this in the past. It's sort of, we'd run the core curriculum at the time was called the Consciousness Development Program through the IAC, which was at the time the IC we were all volunteering for, and people would come, and people were often quite engaged, and then they might come to a few other activities, but on the whole, it was sort of it's not like we weren't building a community, right? You didn't get a community forming around it of people who then also wanted to contribute and perhaps start teaching and so on. So that was very different certainly from Brazil or some other places as well, I think, in Europe. And then activities pretty much stopped here in 2013. And there hasn't been any consistent activities. I did a few online things recently. Tatiana and others, we had an event here in Adelaide. It's sort of a weekend workshop. But I've actually wondered, because we're organizing the conference next year, right? And in October 2024, want to have an international conference here in Adelaide. And I've kind of the impression I have is, in ways that are not immediately apparent, all this work that we did, that Jacqueline mentioned, right, a lot of effort with seemingly little results in a way, has contributed to something that is going to end up in this event that we're doing next year, which will then lead to other things, right? So that's kind of the impression that I have, but it's not in a very transparent way.
Yeah, I just to on this, I feel exactly what Kim has just said. I feel the same way. So it seems that all the work we have been doing here, it's like little by little, right? We've worked with translations, we've worked with online courses, or usually talk chats and talks or workshops, usually some stuff online. And we had, at least I had in Australia 10 years ago, I came to Australia for a few weeks and facilitated one workshop that was really interesting. We had many students comparing to what used to be before. So we had if I'm correct, Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, 38 students back
That
then.
sounds about right. Yeah.
Brand new
Wow.
students who went to the workshop, which was very interesting. But this was 10 years ago. Now we are doing a lot of online, not a lot, but we have done quite a few online activities, and one face-to-face activity in Adelaide that Kim has just talked about. We had a few students, but once we started the activity, right, like in the first second, all the energetic field, the helpers, the same holothos scene that we are used to in the courses we have, facilitated everywhere around the world, was there. It was really interesting to feel that. And I believe that this event next year will be a big thing for us here.
Very good, Tatiana. We have another question from Renato Serzanik. He asks, what kind of Conscientiology courses have been given in Australia, and is there a good attendance at the moment?
Yeah, I think we sort of talked about it already, right? At the moment, at least in the activities I'm involved with, we are having some online activities with Hyperdentia, and for myself as an independent researcher and author of a book. The conscientiocentric institutions usually invite me to talk about the intensive course and some topics related to it. And at the moment, we have a book club about the book intensive course, where people from different countries and parts of Australia as well meet once a month to discuss the chapters of the book and have some activities. So we are doing a lot of online things. Not many people usually participate, but it's something that it's becoming quite regular. So I'm really happy with it.
And I think that the fact that at the moment we've been working online quite a lot, right? Or basically, it helped a lot to have more students, right, connected. Because if you offer a course, for example, in Australia, I don't know about if it happens if the courses in Australia are advertised in other places, but the fact that we have now the online courses helps a lot to get students, because in person we are dependent on the person who goes there and blah blah blah, but now online it's easier, right? Don't you think?
Much easier. It's fantastic. I think we definitely should explore more these opportunities of online activities and get more people engaged. I think ASSIPI with the Let's Talk About activity is doing a fantastic job in regards to this, because it's the opportunity. I'm just looking at the comments and I see people from everywhere in the world, and I'm just
That's
here
right.
sitting in my room, like no one around me, just myself. But we are able to interact with so many people and spread the ideas. So I think this is a huge thing for us, and I think we should definitely do it more.
Definitely, it's very important to mention that. Thank you very much for the attendance today, people. You are on the other side of the screen. We have people from Belgium, from Romania, from Brazil, from Australia, and so forth. Very good. From Germany, yes, I've seen. Yeah, from United States as well. Very good. Thank you very much for your participation. And let's go for another question. Yes, this is for the guys in Australia. Before that, let's tell people where are you speaking from. Tatiana is speaking from Sunshine Coast, right? It's where you live, right? And
Yes.
where are you speaking from, Kim?
I'm in Adelaide, South Australia.
Okay, I know Jacqueline's from Foz do Iguaçu, just
That's
as me.
right.
All right. Good. Second question, people. It comes from Romania. Irina Kondruta asks, right, what were the difficulties encountered in the process of spreading the Conscientiology in Australia?
Well, I might. So from my perspective, there are a number of difficulties. I think the core one is that you're coming in with a new set of ideas, a new way of approaching old topics, right? Topics around which people often have already existing ideas and understandings, people who are interested in this, and also a topic in which many people have limited interest. And I do remember often along the way trying to work out, where do I find the people? Where do I find the people that this will speak to? And because on the one hand, I would go to, I went to a few universities, and I spoke at a sleep lab here at the University of South Australia on the topic of out-of-body experiences, or at the archaeology department on the topic of using parapsychic senses in archaeology research, kind of reaching out to an academic audience. And then you'd go to these. So in Australia, they've got these, probably in Brazil and other countries as well, these sort of psychic fairs, these mind-body psychic events. And people at those events are into all kinds of things. Like, there's not that many, perhaps, that go to those events that are sort of into self-research in a way, like in the way that it's offered in Conscientiology anyway. There's the language barrier, I think, of that most of the texts have to be translated from Portuguese. It's not an easy product in a way, right? When people look at Projectology at the book and they're like, oh wow, it's that book alone, like the people's reaction to that book is quite fascinating at like these fairs where we'd be, and you could see, right, there was occasionally someone would seem enthusiastic and their eyes would they'd be excited, and you think, okay, this person has, but most of the time this would just be like off-putting. This book is too big, I don't want to have anything to do with that. So yeah, I mean, it's creating something, right, in a new space, trying to find the people, and I guess we understand that we're essentially looking for people who've come with this connection, with a connection to this from the intermissive period. So yeah, that's the and it's the focus has been on just making something available that people can find, and to some extent just got to trust that people will find it.
Very well, Kim. Okay, here we have a comment from Larissa Luz. I believe the lack of community is one of the biggest problems for people that study Conscientiology abroad. So I would just to have this question kind of adapted to Jacqueline, because Jacqueline lives in Foz, in the community. So how important it is, Jacqueline, to have the community near us?
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. I think to be this experience of, for example, being just a few people in Australia, and then to be surrounded by, a community, it's a completely different experience. And I think that there's pros and cons, like with any situation. But yes, if you're talking about the community, and have this information around you all the time, and to have it being reinforced, it's different. And there's always people who are similar to you that you can talk to about this information, and there's that support, and so there is a range of benefits. For me, I guess, like on the other side, for example, in Australia, I felt like things were a little bit more simpler in a way. Like, for example, we knew what we need to do and we just did it. We didn't have like this, options, multiple options about, courses and activities and all that. And it's fantastic. I'm not complaining. But, sometimes you get overwhelmed even by all this information and courses. But you have to be very clear about choosing what it is that you want to do and stick to that, because you can have even a deviation within that community if you're not very clear with your specific pro-access clauses. But yes, the community is without a doubt something very positive. And if we could create that, and there has been talk about creating like a community in Australia, but of course you need the people, a group of people big enough to be able to really make that happen. But I have no doubt that sometime in the future it's going to happen.
Definitely, it's very important. I used to live in Rio de Janeiro, which is, big city in Brazil. We had lots of activities there, but it's totally different to live in Foz do Iguaçu, because I think we are near the, where things happen. I mean, in-person activities, right? So we can go to Testolarium and we can go to CAEC. CAEC stands for Center of High Studies of Conscientiology. So we have lots of opportunity here. But I was saying exactly this, right? The online activities help a lot, from people who are living in abroad, the country. But yeah, I would like to ask Tatiana a question. Tatiana, when you arrived in Australia, have you happened to think, what am I supposed to be here? What am I supposed to be here in terms of conscientiology? Have you thought that? Have you considered that?
That's a great question, Mario.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right. That's what I'm curious about. So, what am I
That's
supposed
a
to
very important question that I asked back then and ask myself all the time, right? Because as an intermissivist, I know I have tasks and goals, that I have to achieve and do, right? In order to complete in the end of this lifetime, to complete what I'm supposed to be doing here. So there are some things that I noticed that by moving to Australia and being away of the people around me in the conscientiological community in Foz, that I had to change in my life. Because when you have first the soma, you pass away, you die, and then you have to go through the second desoma, right? To be aware and to have your full consciential abilities and capacity to move on and prepare for your next life, right? And when I moved to Australia, it was sort of like the same thing. I went through first the soma, right? I left Brazil,
Yes.
left my life, my friends, my colleagues, my evolutionary group, and I moved to a country where I was basically by myself with my partner, right? But then I had to go through the second desoma, which was to be aware that this was my life here. I couldn't live my life the fullest if I was like, oh, if I were in Brazil, I would be doing this. If I were in CAEC, I would be doing that. Or my friends, or my family, or the possibilities that I had, the dynamics. If I was just like thinking about my past, the experiences that I used to have, I would never move on here, and I would never be open to actually be aware of my current life, and do something about it with my proaxis. So this is something I think about all the time. And one of the things I noticed that at this stage I have been doing, at least up to last year, maybe, it was more in infiltration. Is it infiltration that we say? Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So it's like an infiltration wherever I go, at my workplace, with my friends. Some of my friends don't even know that I'm a conscientiology researcher. And with, my neighbors, we've had lovely neighbors that we would just go to their places and have some afternoon tea and chat. They have no idea what we do. So by the through infiltration, I have been able to engage with different groups of people and try to set an example, to be an example for these people. And once I see there is a possibility to talk about more deeper kind of topics, I will be obviously open to talk about it and see what happens. And this is very interesting because there are a lot of synchronicities that happen with people, places, situations that I say, wow, what is going on? And then I can, work with those situations and see what happens. So, and at this stage now, I feel there is like a shift, probably because the first Australasian conference and Pacific conference that we are doing here next year. So I feel that some things are changing, and maybe my approach to these to these relationships here in Australia are going to change as well. Let's see.
I've got the feeling that you are the pioneers of something very special that's coming up in Australia very soon. I think that Australia will become one of the the countries that we are going to work with more consistently, and it's very important. But as we are talking about people who have worked with the Ford Conscientiology in Australia, to mention the work of Jeffrey Lloyd, right? Jeffrey Lloyd is also has some verbidity and internationalization of Conscientiology. He's also part of this book here together with Jacqueline Cullen, Aline Voslod, and Lilian Alexandre. So yeah, he's got very important role in this work in Australia as well. We have more things coming up from our audience. Our audience is very participative today. I love it. Let's go for the next comment. Larissa Luz, I think that's why the events in many countries. Oh, it's important to say Larissa made the previous comments, right? About the I believe the lack of community is one of the biggest problems, baba. And then she also says, I think that's why the events in many countries are so important to strengthen the connections between people in person. Right? Kim would like to say something about what do you think about this statement?
Yeah, look, absolutely. I the community point is it's an important part of growing together. I think we know, right, as part of our own evolution, we do it better in community with other people who support each other, and also to challenge each other at times in cosmoethical ways. And so creating events has been it's the key role for us here, right, to when we do it. But like I said, there's been, and for various reasons, there's been hiatuses in that process. So it has to be natural. I think one of the challenges that you have when you're not in a big community already is that you have to do everything as a small group, one person, two people, and just live your life with all the obligations of living a healthy, balanced life. So I feel that for that reason, right, we've gone through different cycles in Australia, and right now we're coming into a new stage that is going to see us be more active. And also, I feel like Australia is a very big country, right? I think most of you probably know that, but it's very large. We're fairly spread out. So there's me and a couple of other volunteers here in Adelaide. Then there is Tatiana and Jeff, who was just mentioned, and both their respective partners on Sunshine Coast. And there's some other people in Brisbane, and there's some other people in New South Wales and Victoria. So we're all spread out across a few thousand kilometers, but we're kind of working together virtually, right? And I think that's that's really been growing and creating that sense of community.
Great.
Yeah.
We'll be talking about the event next year just in a while. Before checking out our comments here from the participants, Marek says, "Hello everyone. I always remember my first CCP class." I think that I have something nostalgic for Jacqueline Cover. All right.
Yeah. Hello, Marek.
Which I took in North Sydney around 12 years ago with Jeff and Anna. That's very nice. Another comment coming from Marek. I was rushing to the class expecting huge crowd of people on fire who wants to learn about consciousness. And then she's got a question here. Do you know how many participants were there? There were 2 people, including me. Jeff left to Brazil after the course, and all activity around consciousness disappeared soon after.
Participants were there. If you could just maybe give a few more details. There, yeah. So, I mean, I don't remember. It was a long time ago, but yes. So for a time in Sydney, at least, there was 3 of us, right? Jeff, Anna, and me. And then Jeff left to live in Brazil, and then Anna and me were there giving classes for the next couple of years in Sydney. And then, yes, it was about 2014 that things stopped in terms of those activities. But but very nice to hear from you, Marek. It's been a long time.
Okay, Marek also says, I guess nothing changed much in Sydney after that. Is this a question or statement? Most activities right now are done online. Is that correct? So this is something for Kim or Tatiana?
Yes, most of the activities are happening online. So you are more than welcome to join us in any of the activities. So look on the websites of the institutions of Conscientiology to find out which activities are offered in English, and just join us. Really, we have the book club, which is free every month, and we just discuss the book and have a good chat, exchange ideas. We have people from pretty much everywhere in the world, so we are welcome to join us.
Very good. Thank you very much for your comments, Marek. Your participation was amazing. Very good.
Also, can I just say one quick thing? The event next year, Marek, you're very invited, welcome to come. I'm sure Kim can also extend the invitation, but it'll be a great event next year.
We are going to talk about the event next year. Yes, I think that this is the cherry of the cake, as we say in Brazil, right? The cherry of the cake, right? So this is for the last. Let's just go over some other comments here from Mariana Nunes. Thank you, Mariana, for your participation. The question is, do you guys see a bigger interest of Conscientiology ideas this last year's comparing to the beginning of the early 20,000s? What do you think about that? Or has interest increased?
I don't think, I think we can't really compare because in the early 2000s, we were running, well, and when I say the early, for me, it was from 2008, between 2008 and 2013. And for Jeff, it was, I think, maybe 4 years before that they started, or 3 or so. We were just running regular education activities, all in person. It was very different. It was a very different scene. And yeah, I don't know. I can't say that. I wouldn't, we recently, when we advertised that event here in Adelaide, we had a fairly small number, usually kind of the same size. I would say it was the same size as we used to get back in the day. Kind of similar dynamic.
Great. But it's interesting just to say, Kim, that even though we didn't have many people, the people who joined us in the event were very, very interesting in terms of the understanding of what we were talking about. So they engaged pretty well and it was really we had a great experience in terms of a group environment to discuss and experience some parapsychic phenomena and talk about more deep topics as well.
That's true.
Very good. We have a comment here for Jacqueline from Marek. Hi, Jacqueline. I did a course with you as well a long time ago. You probably don't remember me. Yes, she does.
Of course I remember you. Yeah, I remember all the group in Australia and Sydney. I'm so glad you're here because it's important to talk about. There was a group of, you, Marek, and other people that were, regulars. You came back and you did the course and other activities. And yeah, you were part of the Australian group there of Conscientiology, and it's so nice after all these years. You're reconnecting here again, and this is it. It's a different phase now. It's a different phase. I think back then it was more, as people are discussing in person. And now it's transitioned to more online. It's different. But I think, for example, this event, this is something, things like that, which are in person. I think these are the things which also will help a lot to bring people. But it's very nice.
Very nice. Well, I'm loving the participation from the audience today. We have more questions coming up. So Patricia Barbosa, thank you, Patricia, for coming for Let's Talk today. Results in conscientiological work are kind of hard to measure objectively. How do you face this? And what motivates you the most to keep doing the job? I think this question involves the internationalization as a whole, right?
Yeah, I think this is the idea. You are very inside of you. You know what your proexis is, what you need to do, and when you do the work, you feel all the support, the connection to the helpers. You see the that it's the numbers. Quantity is not everything. It's the quality and the type of information that you're bringing. As I said, in Australia, when I was a volunteer there, you had to, I didn't expect anything because I didn't know any different. But, if there was one student that turned up and that student really gained something from the content, for us, that was enough, and I think that the motivation is coming like through that exchange of ideas. You feel like you're really contributing with the knowledge and connecting to something bigger than just yourself, and feeling like you're doing your proexis. And it's a different way of looking at things.
All right. Kim, Tatiana, any comments?
Yeah, I guess on that one, I would say for me, it's been there is a satisfaction. Like I measure, I've sort of often measured the extent to which I'm on my own task, right? The existential program that Jacqueline just mentioned, by the satisfaction that I'm feeling within myself, by the sense of connection that I'm feeling with the helpers. And yeah, this could be, there were times so the first public talk I gave in Adelaide, there was no physical person present, right? And I had booked a venue and I gave the talk. And I felt the presence of the helpers, and it just was kind of like a process of going through something to go through that then built. And the next time I had a couple of people, and then I had 3 people, and so on. And then at some point, I guess when we stopped with the activities here in Australia at the time, that also seemed like the right thing to do. There was things had shifted during that period, and that was also okay. So Yeah, I think the motivation, I guess one of the things connected to the existential program is that the motivation really comes from the inside.
Very well. We have one comment from Tony Muskov. Thank you, Tony, for coming, for your participation. Conscientiology flourishes where there are intermissivists. In this sense, what are the advantages and disadvantages of being an intermissivist born in Australia? That's a very good question.
I guess Jacqueline's the best person to answer this question.
I was waiting for you guys to answer. Okay, so yeah, for me, being born in Australia, I think, let's see, some of the advantages. Yeah. I mean, of course, you grew up in a culture, like you feel, there's not that many, I don't know, for me, there was only a few of us here in Australia. At some point, I had an experience and I kind of felt like, oh, I was kind of alone, but you're not alone. Maybe like, how could I say, when you connect multidimensionally and extra-physically, then you and they are out there. The other intermissivists are out there. But I think it gave me, how could I say, that, for example, the Australian culture, this sense of questioning things. I think there's an aspect of the culture where the practice of the disbelief principle, right? I think it's something that's quite strong. You don't believe in anything until you see the facts. And for me, this mindset that I have, I think that's an advantage. Yeah, I think, I don't know, there's both advantages and disadvantages. Is there, for me, it was very positive to be born here. I feel like it's an opportunity that I had with all for example, living in a safe environment, for example, with good education. Australia has an excellent education system. So it gave me all the tools, the potential to flourish in a way. And yeah.
Mesologically speaking, yes. Very nice. Well, unfortunately, our time has come, right? We are just over 3 minutes over our time, but I cannot finish our talk today without talking about the event next year. So I would like Kim and Tatiana to spread out this word. Let's go for that.
All right. So next year, from the 18th to the 20th of October, 2024, we will have in Adelaide the first Australasian Pacific Conference of Serenology and Paraurbanology, two research specialities of Conscientiology that are really topical at this time in the development of human life on this era, you could say, with a lot of shifts that are happening in the world that we understand through the lens of paraurbanization, and the serenology, the study of the Homo sapiens serenissimus, as providing kind of an anchor for our evolutionary trajectory, or a north compass for our evolutionary trajectory. And so, yeah, we are hosting this event in the Adelaide Convention Centre. And we really, which you can see there, that the glass building, and we are really inviting and hoping to see people from all over the world who feel drawn to those ideas, and also to be part of something new, right? And to combine it with coming to a really beautiful part of the world. If you're coming from overseas, to turn it into a holiday to remember for the rest of your life. We will be creating some events around the conference to really welcome people from overseas, to give them a really positive and rich experience. So, yeah, very looking forward to doing that, to being part of that with whoever can come.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add real quick that people are invited to submit, any kind of experience, research related to these themes. and that Australia is a great place to visit. It's a place where you can experience different cultures. It's on the other side of the world. And it's a great country to visit and to experience some retrocognitive stuff, but don't believe in anything and not even in what I'm telling you. So come check it out and have your own experiences.
Exactly. And don't forget kangaroos, koalas, emus, platypuses, dolphins, all waiting for you here in Australia. Let's not mention the sharks. Yeah.
Okay, as a Brazilian who has never been to Australia, the idea I have of the country is that it's a paradise. Is that true?
It's a great place to visit.
Yeah, it's scuba diving thing, surfing.
It's everything. Yeah.
And that's very interesting.
A lot of energy. Yeah, definitely. A lot of energy. Yeah, to experiment. Yeah.
Very good. Oh, unfortunately, I have to say goodbye. It's 9:07. I think that people in Australia they are way ahead of the time, right? It's what, 10 or what time is it, Kim, there?
For me, it is 20 to 11.
20 to 11. Look at this. It's late. Yes. So we have some more comments here, but okay. I have to go for the final words, right? Tatiana Mota, can you wrap up our conversation today?
Yes, Mario, I just wanted to thank you all for the invitation and for the great time. And it was so quick. How come? We need to have more opportunities like that. We have so much to talk about our experiences, right? But thank you so much for having me, and hope to talk to you guys sometime soon.
Definitely. We'll have more opportunities for sure.
Yes, I would also just like to thank you all for this opportunity as well to talk. And yeah, like Tatiana, I think it was the tip of the iceberg that we touched in terms of Australia and Australian culture. There's so many things. So yeah, we're waiting for another opportunity to to chat.
Okay. Kim?
Yeah, look, I'll just say thanks everybody who tuned in. It's great to see the comments and to know people are there. And we really hope to see you in person here in Australia.
Very nice, people. I'm very glad to have you here today. I'm really into talking with people from these 4 countries. Then Eliane just reminded me that we have Switzerland as well as one of the important countries that is disseminating conscientiology in the world today. But it was very, very nice to have you here. I'm glad that you accept the invitation. And so I just want very, very quickly thing, which is intensive course, Tatiana Mota. I couldn't finish without saying that this is translated into 4 languages, right? English. Let me see if I get it. You might. English, Portuguese, English, Spanish, Romanian, and what's the 4th one, Tatiana? German? No.
Portuguese, English, Spanish, and Romanian.
And Romania, that's right. Okay, great. And it's available on Amazon, as far as I know, right? Amazon website, right? So if you want to get this book, just go there and have your copy, because I have this in Portuguese and the book is fantastic. Our next Let's Talk is November 25th. Now we're going to talk about Germany in Conscientiology. We'll be talking about with the German people. Thank you very much for your participation. I love the participation today. Many questions, many comments, and that's what our debate is all about, right? The participation of people and having our guests spreading out their ideas and so forth. Very nice. Thank you very much. And I see you on November 20th. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.